everyone, welcome to our review of the cell theory. I wanted to start by saying that one of the most important inventions that led to the development of the cell theory was the compound light microscope. Now, that's the same microscope that we've used in class when you've looked at things like onion cells dividing in mitosis, and also at protists such as the amoeba and paramecium. You've actually used the compound light microscope to see them. There were many other scientists who have also looked through a compound light microscope, the first of whom was Robert Hooke. He looked through the compound light microscope and determined the word cells for us. Now, before him, we never used the word cells to describe something living. We only used the word cells to describe jail cells and monastery cells and other kind of square-shaped buildings. Now, we remembered that Hooke called things cells because we said he was hooked on cork. Now, cork is a type of plant, so when he looked at cork under a microscope, he saw square shapes, and he determined that those would be called cells for us. So next, after him, we had Van Leeuwenhoek. Anton van Leeuwenhoek looked at different samples of pond water, dental scrapings, and other biological samples, and he said, hey, those things look like tiny animals, so let's call them animalcules. Now, in class, we remembered him by saying, ew, Leeuwenhoek, because of all the kind of gross samples that he was looking at when he saw those single-celled organisms that he thought looked like animals. The next two scientists were these two German guys, Schwann and Schleiden, and they determined that all animals and plants are made up of cells. Now, back in their time, we didn't really know about protists, bacteria, archaea, or even fungi. We thought they were a type of plant. So for them, saying that all animals and plants are made of cells, they were basically saying that all living things are made up of cells. Now, we remembered that Schwann was the one who said that all animals are made up of cells because Schwann kind of sounds like swan. And we said that Schleiden was the one who said that all plants are made up of cells because Schleiden kind of rhymes with garden. So we said, oh, Schleiden was in the garden. The last of these five scientists that we talk about for cell theory was Virchow. Now, Virchow wrote this old book, and the title isn't super exciting, so we could remember that his name was Virchow because it kind of sounds like a sneeze, like you would maybe blow some dust off of this book if you were to pick it up and try to read it. So you say, Virchow! But he wrote a book called Every Cell Originates from Another Existing Cell Like It, and that really let us know that cells can't come out of nowhere. They do have to come from something pre-existing or another cell that was living before it. So the work of those five guys who were using the compound light microscope ended up leading to the original cell theory, which has three parts. The original cell theory says that living things are composed of one or more cells, and that kind of came from the work of Hooke and van Leeuwenhoek. The next part says that cells are the basic unit of structure and function of all living things, which is kind of an add-on with Schleiden and Schwann's work. And finally, the third part, new cells arise from pre-existing cells. That came from the ideas in Virchow's book. So together, those five scientists kind of came up with and put together these three big ideas of the original cell theory. Now, we've talked about this several times in class too, but we know that with modern technology comes more advancements in science, and we can have a better understanding of the world around us. And because of some of our modern advancements in DNA technology and things like the electron microscope, we've now come up with the modern cell theory, which adds on to the original cell theory. So it doesn't necessarily say the original cell theory was wrong in any way. In fact, we still believe all the parts of the original cell theory to be true, but we've added on these modern cell theories idea. So the first of those ideas is that metabolism occurs within cells. And what that means is there are different chemical reactions happening in each cell to produce energy. Those could be things like photosynthesis or cellular respiration. The next part of the modern cell theory is going to be that hereditary information, which is DNA, or sometimes even RNA, is passed on from one cell to another. And basically, we've talked about that in class in talking about mitosis and meiosis. We said that before those two things could happen, that interphase happens within those cells. Interphase is made up of three parts, G1, S, and G2, and the S stands for synthesis, which is when DNA or RNA is being copied so that it could be passed from one cell to another. The last part of the modern cell theory is that all cells have the same basic composition. Now, we know that there are many different organelles that make up different types of cells, but all cells that are living have some sorts of organelles or parts of cells in common. And those things are things like the cell membrane, cytoplasm, ribosomes, and some sort of genetic material. Anyway, together with the modern cell theory and the original cell theory, we have been able to put forth the overall kind of big picture cell theory and understand that all living things are made up of these cells and they all kind of have similar characteristics and traits. So that's the cell theory. Thank you so much for listening.